All right, here we're going to be starting here very shortly. Just giving a few people a few minutes to kind of get in here, and we'll just go right away. As you're coming in, please hit the like button for me. As you're coming into the live stream, do me a favor and just hit the like button. All right, thanks, guys. Okay. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I thank you all for joining today. I want to get started and I want to discuss this whole thing about the JAPA culture. So I want to talk about that. That is a conversation that we're going to be having today. And the reason why I want to discuss this was inspired by a few things that I saw on the internet regarding the topic. I saw quite a few conversation around this, and from quite a few people. It has become a topic of discussion, and I wanted to just sort of talk about it. One of the discussions that really caught my attention was one by a preacher. And I think his video went viral. Of all the ones I've seen, his video went viral. And normally when I see preachers, I just don't listen to preachers. I usually just kind of scroll through and don't pay attention to preachers because most of them I find them to be really snake oil. But nonetheless, this one caught my attention. So I wanted to, so I stopped to kind of hear what he had to say. And the reason why I even stopped to hear what this particular person had to say was because a couple of people referenced his version of the whole thing. And so I stopped to hear what he had to say about on the topic. And boy, was I glad that I did. And I was so glad that I did because he spoke very profoundly regarding the topic. He spoke very, very well. A lot of the points that he made on the topic were very, very important points. They were great points, and I wanted to address it. Now, on his version of it, he addressed this from the Nigerian perspective. In other words, he was talking to a room full of Nigerians, and so he addressed it from that perspective. I want to address this today from the American perspective. That means for those of you that are thinking about coming to the United States, I want to address this from that perspective. I want to give you some information that you may not know on the topic. So I want to address this from that point of view. And I'm going to give you some real shit today. I'm going to give you some real shit. I'm going to give you very candid information because I think some of you need to hear this. I think a lot of you need to hear this. If not all of you, you need to hear this. So we're going to talk about this culture of the JAPA culture. And I want to get right into it because I'm going to cover quite a few things. Please understand that this video is not intended to deter you from leaving. This video is not intended to deter you from, whatever your plans are to leave your country, and to come to the West, most especially the United States. This is not what this video is for. So I'm not going to deter you, right? But what I am going to do is I am going to give you some information that I think you need to know. Something for you to consider. Things that I wish people would have told me when I was in your position years ago. So I'm going to give you some information from how it stands here. All right. And we're going to have a good discussion. Please make sure you're hitting the like button as you're coming in. So let's get right into it, because I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want this video to be a long video. If you can all hear me, if you can't hear me, let me know. Okay. I think you guys can hear me, but if you can't hear me for whatever reason, let me know, and I'll see what I can do about that. But I think most of you can hear me. All right. So let's talk about it. The idea of coming to the United States. Understand that when you come to the United States, there are things that you need to know, right? So I'm going to give you that information. Now, who is this video for? Real quickly, let's get it out of the way. This video is for the 20-year-old, from 20-year-old all the way to 39-year-old that is over there, that is still in either Nigeria, the motherland. This is who this video is for. Those of you that are thinking about making your way here. So my Gen Zs and my Gen Ys, this is who this video is for. That's who I want to talk to today. Now, the people that would understand what I'm talking about here in the United States, people that live here currently, that are going to understand and know exactly and confirm what I'm talking about, are people that are 45 years old and older. Those ones are going to confirm the information that I'm going to be telling you guys today. They're going to concur with the information I'm going to give you today. So those are the two audiences that this video is for. The 20-year-old to 39, the 40-year-old, the 45-year-old, and older that live in the United States. So I want to talk to the 20-year-old to 39-year-old that are still back in the motherland, that are back home in either Nigeria, whatever part of the African country that you're watching me from, and you're thinking about making that move, because there has been an overwhelmingly increase of people leaving their country, especially leaving West Africa to the West. So I want to talk to people coming to the United States. I can only speak to what I'm going to talk to you has to do with the United States, right? I can't speak to what's going on in other countries, but here in the United States. So I want you guys to get the information. Okay, so let's get right into this, because it's important. So first of all, those are the ones I'm talking to, right? Now, for those of you that are coming here, understand that while you're making a decision to come to the United States, you're not going to own anything. Okay? You're not going to own anything. So if your idea of coming here for whatever reason, I can understand some of the reasons for you to want to leave your country. Education is one of those. You want better education. You want a better life for you and your family. You just want a better system that works. Okay, so we're going to address each of them. I'm not going to be on this video too long. I'm going to give you the pointers really quickly. But one thing I want you to understand, that you're not going to own anything. 89 to 90% of people that live in the United States don't own nothing. Don't own shit. Don't own nothing. You're not going to own a house. You're not going to own that. Most times you're not going to own your car. You're going to be more indebted to the financial system, and you're going to be a slave to the financial system. And I'm going to peel this whole thing, and I'm going to unpack this whole thing. Okay? Most people in the United States are slaves to the financial system. Okay? Now, I don't know if you've heard this before, so I'm going to stand in the gap right now. I'm going to act like your uncle, your big brother, your father, your friend, someone that may or may have not told you this, but I'm going to tell you these things. Okay? 89 to 90% of people that live in the United States don't own anything. They don't own nothing. There's a small pocket of people that may own their stuff. Maybe 1% of the entire population. There's over 300 million people that live in the United States, at least as of the last 2020 census. Okay? 1% of those may own this stuff. 1%. And those are mostly like the white people, people that had stuff passed on to them from generation, and they've just really, these are people that really run the economy. So those ones will have things passed on. But even with that, most of them don't own anything. They don't own their homes. They don't own their cars. They're indebted up to their eyeball, like many people. So no one. So the idea of you coming here, if your idea of coming here is to own your own home, you can forget it. You're not going to have it. Most people don't own their houses. A lot of people. Let's talk about the debt that most people have in the United States. That most of you, wherever you're coming from, don't have these debts, right? You're not a slave to the financial institution as many of us, most of us here are. So let's peel it one by one. Mortgage. For those that are privileged enough to have a home, when I mean home, to have a home, that means you went to the bank approved you for a loan, for a mortgage. No one. Most people are paying mortgage. Most people don't own their homes. Okay? They don't. They have a lien on their home. I have a lien on my home. They call it a mortgage lien. Right? Mortgage lien. Most people have that. Until you pay off that mortgage, the lien exists. And so many people are locked into a 15 to 30 year fixed rate, right? 30-year mortgage on their home. That is the average that most people are locked in. So most people don't own their home. And even when they pay off that home, you still don't own it, because you still got to pay taxes. And depending on where you live, you may pay HOA dues, right? And so if you default at any one of those, even after you've paid your home off, they'll take that house. So most people don't own their home. This is something that this is something that's a lot different from wherever you're coming from. Because, like, for example, in Nigeria, most of you own your own home. You're not locked into a 30-year mortgage. You're not. There's a little bit of a credit system now, I think, that goes on in that country. But even that, they give you like 2 years to pay off the house with the new system that's going on right now. But most of you are not locked into a 30-year mortgage. Most of us in the United States are locked into that and will never. Like, for example, my house right now, it's a great house. I'm very proud of it. I built it last year, moved in last year. So I've only been in this house a little over a year. By the time I pay off this house, okay, based on my amortization schedule, anyone that has a mortgage that's ever bought a house understand what an amortization schedule is. Based on my amortization schedule, I will be 85 years old by the time I pay off this house. Now, if I accelerate my payment, right, meaning that I pay a little bit more than what my mortgage, the bank has, my amortization schedule is, if I pay a little bit more every month, based on what we've calculated, I will be 75 years old by the time I pay it off. That is on an expedited fast track payment. 75 years old. I'm 44 years old right now. That's how long it's going to take me to pay off this house. Now, where in the world am I doing? What do you think I'm going to need a house? What would I do with a house at 75, 85 years old, paid off? What do you think that's going to do for me at that age? Now, you might say, well, you can pass it on to your kids. True, right? So that's the plan, is to pass it on to my kid. But then my wife and I have other things that we worked on anyway that will have our kids are going to be fine. The things that we put already in place, our kids they'll be fine. But the point I'm trying to tell you is that for this house that I'm living in right now, which is the same for most people, right, in the United States, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, anyone, they don't own their homes. And even when I pay off this house, I still got to pay taxes, property taxes. That is never going to go away. You don't pay off property taxes. There's no such thing as you've paid off all your property taxes. It's an ongoing recurrence. You're going to keep paying property taxes because property taxes is how they fund the school system. It's how they fund the local ordinances and local infrastructure. So that's important. So you're going to pay your property tax. So you're never going to own your house. Okay? And as I mentioned, you're still going to have HOA dues depending on where you live. If you have those type of situation, Like where I live in a gated community, so I pay HOA dues. If I ever default on that, they can foreclose on my house. Even when I pay my mortgage properly. If I default on my HOA dues for like 6 months straight, they can kick me out of here. Do you get that? So that is a reality that most people don't understand, and I need everyone to get. You're not going to own your house. So that's that. Most people don't own their houses. They live in big fancy houses and all that. No one owns that. They don't own it. Where you're coming from, you own that. There's no such thing as, someone taking your stuff. If you bought it and you own it outright. That is a privilege that most of you have, that most of us here don't have. Okay, so that is the house situation. Let's talk about the cars. Most people in their cars don't own their cars. As a matter of fact, the newer the car, the less likely that person owns that car. Most people, when I mean most, I'm not talking about 51%, I'm talking about upwards as 80, 90%. Most people here drive cars they're paying what's called a note on. Again, another lien on the car. It's a note. Okay? Talk about debt. Okay, we're still in the realm of you being financially, you're going to be enslaved into the system, right? Most people don't own their cars. So this financial situation in the U.S. is designed in a way where it keeps you in a revolving type of debt situation. That means most people change their cars averagely every 2-3 years. So for an average person, an average note in the car is a 7-year span. So you go to the car dealership, if you get approved for a car, you either put down something down payment or you walk away without putting anything down based on your credit. So if you have a great credit, you may not put anything down. You can walk away from it, and you pay monthly. So most people pay anywhere from 5 to 6 years on a car, on a $20,000 car, $23,000 car. Most people pay that. Okay. And they will stretch it out for 7 years, which is what they will stretch it out for. Averagely, most people will change cars or trade in for a new one within 3 years. So that car they got, say for example, someone that bought a car last year in 2021. By 2024, that person is going to be looking to change that car. They don't have to, but the system, the way they process, because you're going to want a new car. You're going to want the latest car. You're going to want the newest thing. The car that you have right now is going to look old to you, and you're going to want a new one. You don't have to, but that's usually what people do here. It's equivalent to the cell phone. Most people change their cell phones every 2 years. Never mind the fact that it's a battery thing, right? Never mind that. But the culture really sort of promotes the idea of having the latest thing, the newest thing. That's how we all get sucked into it. So most people are indebted and they never get out of the car loan situation, and is a money pit. Is that the situation you want to come into? Okay, so understand that's going to be your reality. All right, so that is the car and the house. The other loan and the debt that most people also face, which is more than everything else, is the credit card situation. The credit card situation is the worst of all of it. Most Americans and most people that live in the United States have credit cards. Okay, they have credit cards. And these are variable rates. That means they're not fixed. It fluctuates. And they can be anywhere from 10, 12, 16, 17% interest rate every month. So that is a killer. Most people have credit cards. Most people charge things on credit card because the system was built off of credit. So you have people that go and buy things that they can't afford, and they pay with a credit card. So a lot of the fancy, when you see people rocking and they look like they all got it together and they have things good, they're on borrowed credit. They have credit card debt. Okay? And credit card debt has surpassed both mortgage and car loan debt in the U.S. history. It is the worst debt right now. Okay? So most people have that. You don't have credit card situation. You guys don't have it. You go to the car lot. If you don't have money for whatever, you don't own it. It's a cash system back home. So you have that privilege. Okay, so I'm giving you some instances here of what we are facing here. Okay, so that is the credit card situation. The other one is student loan debt. Student loan debt is what most Americans also have. Okay, a lot of people, especially if you went to college, you probably have a student loan debt. It's a few percentage of people that went to college and they don't have student loan debt. Again, those are ones that either got money transferred to them, got money given to them. They're well off. That's a tiny part of our system. But majority of people have student loan debt. They went to school. They borrowed money to finish school. You'd be surprised what a lot of these people have as debt. If you went to law school, you're coming out of there with almost $200,000 debt. If you went to medical school, you're coming out of there with at least $300,000 in debt. Somewhere around $200,000 to $300,000 in debt. These things are not cheap. For most people that go to regular school, right, depending on the school they go to, they're anywhere from $40,000, $60,000 to $80,000 student loan debt. We call student loan debt a mortgage. As a matter of fact, most will call it the first mortgage, okay? Because they lock you in for at least 30 years. There are people that have been out of school for 25 years. They're still paying student loan debt. I want you to hear what I just said. There are people that have been out of school 25 years. They're still paying their student loan debt. Student loan debt crushes people in the United States. So now when you add what I've just said, you can see that most Americans, which is why they've written extensively about it, most people don't have savings. Most people are one paycheck away from homelessness. There are more people are falling into homeless situation now than ever before. The situation is dire. Let's not even talk about the fact that inflation has gone crazy right now. So we're talking about on a normal, regular situation. We're not talking about what happened this year because of COVID and because of inflation. We're not talking about that. The situation is bad this year. Next year, they're predicting a recession in this country. Global recession all over anyway. They're predicting that next year. But we're talking about a normal situation, pre-COVID. This is the lifestyle that many people are faced with every day. It's a financial burden. I want you to understand exactly what it is you're leaving your life over there to come in here for. Now, you may tell yourself, that's fine. It's better than the situation I'm in right now. Really? Okay. Because that's a normal human thinking. Most people think the grass is greener on the other side. That's human being. Human beings always think the grass is greener on the other side. Let me tell you this. I started this whole live stream by saying that there are two people I want to talk to about. The two people this video is for. Two people. Okay, the 30 to 39-year-olds that are over there thinking about coming here. And then the 45 to like 60 or 70-year-olds that are already here, right? That are here. Majority of people here in the United States want to come back home. Majority, let me say that again. Majority of us that are here already in the diaspora, I will talk about the United States. And I can only say it because I have a circle of friends. Talking to you, want to come back home for reasons that I've talked about, right? For the reasons I've gone about, but more importantly, there's another reason that most of us want to come back home. Because most of us here in the United States, no matter how successful we become, this place will never quite be like home to many of us, to most of us. There's a social element to all of this that is worse off than what I've just talked about. Yes, the financial situation is bad, and most Nigerians that live here are doing very well, but they're not saving anything. You know, they don't have money. They don't have discretionary income. By the time they factor in the money they paid into their mortgage, the money they pay sending money home, the remittance they send back home, by the time they factor all the expenses that they're leasing, call it lease on life, they have no savings. On top of that, they have to deal with a social dilemma, which is the racial and prejudice that most of us face here in the country. Now, let me talk about that. I'm going to spend some time on that one, because that is the single most reason why a lot of us want to come back home, right? A lot of us want to make that leap back to our country, okay? I know for me, that's undoubtedly my plan, is to come back home. Now, there's reasons why I would not be able to make that today. Here are my 3 reasons why I can't make that today. Okay? And I'm going to give you, I don't know what everybody else's reasons are, but I'm going to give you 3 of my reasons. Please hit the like button as you're coming in. Please hit the like button as you're coming in. Okay? Thank you, guys. Here are my 3 reasons why I cannot make that decision today. But do please understand that I and many that are within that age that I've just talked about, 45 and above, most of us want to come back home, regardless of the life that we're living here, regardless of the house, the cars, all of that, right? Most of us want to come back home for this one single reason, because of the social dilemma that we find ourselves. Most of us are treated like second class. Most of us. I'm not talking about just Nigerians. I'm talking about every black person that live in the United States. Most of us are treated like second class. Okay, at some point in life, money ceases to become the most important thing in your life. At some point. Okay, money. Now, you may not agree with that, but this is my theory. Money ceases to become that important to most people at some point in life. Most people will argue is when you die that happens, right? But all of us go through a process where money stops becoming very important. I don't care what your money situation is. I don't care if you're making the most or if you're making the least. Money stops to become that which is important. What always will remain constant in any generation that will never change is community and family. Those will always remain true no matter what. Those will never cease to be important. Everyone everywhere has a family that's important to them. Somebody somewhere comes from a community. Those two things have been known to be the most important thing over money. Okay, now you may not agree with what I just said, but understand that many people feel this way. Okay, now here are the 3 reasons why I haven't made that leap yet. Number 1, my kids. I've got 2 kids who are in school. Okay, to move them over there would be I will have to disrupt their education. That means I will have to pull them out of school here and re-enroll them in school in Nigeria. That is not a problem, but it's going to disrupt their education. It's going to disrupt them psychologically and mentally because they will have to learn a system that they're not used to. Okay, that is going to have an adverse effect on my kids. Now they'll get over it, but I don't want them to go through that because it's not something I'm willing to do. Not to mention the ASU and all the strike that go on over there. So I do that, and then 20 years in, my kids are on strike for school. You know, even though now I know they've called off the strike, but that is something that's ongoing over there. As a father and as a parent, I cannot imagine that I pulled my kid out of a system that was a sure thing in education and put them into a system that is not certain. And my kids have to go through where after they graduate high school and in college, or they go through the situation that is going on over there. It's pretty bad. So that's one reason why I would not do that yet, to pull them out of school here and put them in there, because it's going to disrupt them mentally, and I'm not willing to do that. Okay. Secondly, the taxes. Taxes is another reason. As a U.S. citizen, I will be double taxed once I leave here and move to Nigeria, right? So whether I own a business over there or I begin working over there, a regular job, either way, I'm going to have to pay taxes here in the United States, and I have to pay taxes back in Nigeria. So that's called a double tax. Taxes here is hard enough for most of us. It's crazy. Let alone now you have to pay double tax, right? So that is another reason why I can't make that decision right now, because of that. That's going to eat into whatever my take-home pay is or whatever that is. That's going to eat into my gross. Now, I cannot pay U.S. taxes, but what would happen is I would have to renounce my citizenship, right? So that's not just for me, that's for anyone. For you to not pay U.S. taxes and you're living in a different country, you have to renounce your citizenship. Now, most people are not going to do that, and I'm not going to do that, right? So the idea of really having to pay double taxes it's a concern. Thirdly, the security issue, right? The security issue over there is a huge problem, especially for myself with a family, with kids. It's a concern. If I was just by myself and I didn't have my kids, I would make that leap, right? But to have my kids and my wife and all of that, it's a security issue. You know, I can't imagine I can't imagine it, to have my kids in school and something unthinkable. I can't imagine it. So I'm not even going to go there. So that security issue is a huge problem. Now, they fix any of these things, of course, right? Now I know these things are temporal, right? So when I say yet, that means that these are reasons why I can't make that decision today, but doesn't mean that I will not make that decision in the future. We currently have, my family and I have an exit plan that we put in place that would literally, once my kids are in college, I can literally make that move. As a matter of fact, we're talking about 15 years from now, because my son is 7. In about 12 years, he will be in college. 15 years from that, my daughter will be in college. So when they are in college, that can make that decision easier for me. But understand that either way, I am going to move back home, but I just can't make that decision. That is my 3 reasons. Okay? Others may have their own reasons, but most of us here, even while discussing with friends, want to come back home for the simple fact that the social dilemma that most of us find ourselves and the way we're being treated here in the United States is that which become intolerable. And we'll rather just go back to where we belong and where people look like us than having to live in homes that you don't own. Than having to live in cars or drive cars that you don't even own. Or be indebted into the crisis in the credit card situation that most people find themselves. Is that the life that most of you want? Okay, so let's talk about the social dilemma. Let's talk about the social dilemma. Now, most of you might watch this and say, well, it's better than where I'm living here. The racism there is not compared to the racism. It's better. I can deal with the racism. That's what you tell yourself. It's easy for you to say that until you get here. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you a video. And I want you to take a look at this video. And I'm going to go through a few of those social dilemmas that most of us find ourselves, that frankly, a person like myself, I've become very weary of that. And it's a problem. Now, you can tell yourself that it is not. It is. Here's why it's a problem, because most of us that live here, we have to defend our blackness every time. Most of you that live where you live in Nigeria, most of you don't even call yourself black, right? Because you wake up, the next door neighbor is black. Your barber is black. The guy at the store is black. Your local officials are black. Your policemen are black. Your business owner, everyone you see around you is black. So no one defends. You have the privilege over there, like the white people here have the privilege of their whiteness here. You have that privilege over there. See, when white people wake up here, they don't have to defend their whiteness. They just walk in it. Just like you, when you wake up over there, you don't have to defend your blackness. You just wake up. You just do your normal dealings. That is not a psychological thing that many of you think about. Most of us here think about that. I know for me every day when I wake up and I get out of this house, that is a thought, a constant reminder that I'm reminded every day by the outside world that I don't belong and my blackness is a problem. Here is how my blackness is a problem for me. Others might have different situation. Here is how it shows up for me. Okay? But before I do that, let me play this video for you so you guys understand the stuff that many of us deal with. This is not just a one-off situation. Okay? This is not a one-off situation. This is something that goes on constantly. And people are either facing these type of situation or facing other variations of that. But nonetheless, if you're black in this country, you're facing one of these situations. And that is a problem. So I want you to watch this real quickly.
Late Tuesday night, IMPD Sergeant Eric Huxley, a 15-year veteran with the department, was indicted by a federal grand jury for excessive use of force for his actions against Jermaine Vaughn. Sergeant Huxley, seen on police body camera last September, kicking Vaughn as he was handcuffed on the ground in the face. Huxley now charged.
Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear me. Is the sound coming okay with that? I want to make sure that the video, because I need you guys to watch this. Is the video coming okay? Just let me know. Someone put a yes that the video and the sound is coming okay, and I'll replay it because I want you guys to see this. Let me know if you guys, the video is coming okay. If someone can put in a yes in the chat for me. Okay. All right. So I'm going to replay. I'm going to keep playing the video. All right.
Late Tuesday night, IMPD Sergeant Eric Huxley, a 15-year veteran with the department, was indicted by a federal grand jury for excessive use of force for his actions against Jermaine Vaughn. Sergeant Huxley, seen on police body camera last September, kicking Vaughn as he was handcuffed on the ground in the face. Huxley now charged with 1 count of deprivation of rights under color of law. In a statement, IMPD Chief Randall Taylor said, quote, "As law enforcement officers, we must understand that this behavior violates the community's trust. We have confidence the judicial system will bring justice to Mr. Vaughn and his family." IU criminal justice professor Stephanie Whitehead said a grand jury will likely bring charges based on visual evidence.
Now that the grand juries are more educated, that police chiefs are taking it seriously, you've got this real shift in our culture to where now cases like this are actually given high profile attention. Even local cases, this is going to a federal grand jury.
Huxley remains suspended without pay, pending a recommendation of termination to the IMPD Civilian Police Merit Board.
Okay. All right. So, hopefully you guys saw that. Hopefully you saw that. Now, you may look at that and you say to yourself, well, that kid must have been acting crazy for him to, no one deserves that. No one. Is equivalent to the George Floyd situation. You're going to find people that are going to defend the actions of that police officer. You're going to find people that are going to defend that and think that that was okay. When George Floyd happened, there were people, believe it or not, that defended the actions of that police officer, even while we know it was wrong. Is that the stuff you want to come to? This is stuff that people are likely going to deal with. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and paint police officers as bad people. Now, I'm not going to do that, right? Because I've come across really great police officers. I've come across a lot of them. But the idea that this could happen to you, and in many cases only happens to black men in this country. That could be your situation. Is that what you want to come in here for? Okay, I talked about earlier on that a lot of racism shows up for me. The way racism shows up for me, it shows up for people differently. It shows up for people differently. The way it shows up for me as it relates to police officers is never in a traffic violation. Like, most times when you see these situations that happen, it's usually off of, during a traffic stop that you find a lot of these incidents occur. That one that we just saw isn't a traffic situation. That is one of the ones that scares me. The one that that I don't get afraid of is a traffic stop. Because most times when I am driving and I get pulled over by a police officer, I don't put myself in that situation. I don't. When a police officer pulls me over, how you doing, officer? Can I help you? Yes, you were going fast. I apologize, sir. Can I see your license and driver's license and registration? I pull it out and I give it to him or her. I don't mouth off. I don't cause a scene. I don't cause a situation because I need to go home. Right? I don't create a situation. I don't. Right? When they call, I've been pulled over police officers that came up with bogus situation. I don't argue with them. I don't. I just do exactly what they say. Sir, may I see your driver's license and registration? Your backlight was broken. Most times when they tell you that, you don't get out of the car and say, let me look at that. You stay in the car. So you take their word for it. Even though I've had a situation where the cop told me my backlight was broken when it wasn't. Now, maybe that cop was trying to get a reaction out of me, but that cop did not. So I said, well, I apologize. I'll fix that right away. Okay. He wrote me a ticket and I went away. Got home, found out my backlight wasn't broken. So I've been in that situation, but I never let it get out of hand. And I think most Nigerians here are law-abiding enough that we don't let it get out of hand. Here's where it shows up for me. Here's what concerns me as it relates to racism in this country. It's never a situation where I'm driving or anything like that. It's never that situation. That's never when it shows up for me. Here's where it shows up for me, where I'm most concerned. When I go to the grocery store, right? When I go to the movie theater, or when I go to, I'm at the park with my kids, or I'm walking, in any situation, whatever. And someone decide, maybe a Karen, decide that they are going to exert their privilege today by either challenging me or whatever. Maybe I'm at the gas station. That's the part that concerns me. Okay, I'm at the gas station and someone cuts me off, and I'm like, why would you do that? And we get into this, back and forth. They call the cops. It has never happened to me, but I'm telling you that that's the part that worries me, because when they call the cops are more likely going to take their word for it than my word. That is the part that concerns me. Because at any point that can happen to you, and at any point that can happen to me. As a matter of fact, that has happened to me, not at the gas station, but I'm going to give you a case in point. Let me give you a story that happened 3 months ago regarding that. I went to a bar with friends of mine. This happened just like almost 3 months ago now. This happened 3 months ago. I went to a local bar with some friends of mine. We had a great time. We had a few drinks, paid. And I pay with a credit card. I usually try not to pay with my credit card. When I mean credit card, I mean my bank card. I don't have a credit card. I try not to pay with my bank card because I always have this craziness that I might leave my card somewhere, right? Or they might overcharge some crazy stuff like that. So I always take cash most times when I go out with my friends and pay with cash. But on this particular day, I didn't have cash, so I paid with my credit card. I was given my receipt, I tipped, and I signed both receipts. So I like to do this. There's this practice that I do where I sign both receipts when I go to restaurants with my wife and whatever. I will sign both receipts, give them the copy, and I'll put the exact amount of whatever tip that I give them into the copy that I have. And I usually keep that copy for at least a week. I've always had this practice. So I did that on that same day. Went home. No big deal. Got home, found out the next day that I was overcharged by this bar, right? My greatest fear finally came through. They overly charged me, right, for my drinks. So I said, okay. So I go back a week later to the bar and, just to tell them that this happened and see if they can correct it. So I go over there and I meet this bartender. And I asked, can I speak to a manager? And she said, there's no manager, I'm the manager. How can I help you? You can tell the tone, right? So I said, well, I came here a week ago, last Saturday, as a matter of fact, and I noticed that you guys overcharged me, right? She's pacing back and forth, right? And she said, sorry, we don't do that. We don't overcharge you. We don't overcharge people. We don't do stuff like that. She was very belligerent. She said, maybe you should not have gotten drunk. This is what she tells me. Okay? Maybe you should not have, maybe I wasn't drunk. She doesn't even remember who I was, but she just assumed that maybe if you didn't get drunk, you remember what you paid. And you won't come in here and accuse us of overly charging you. That's how she was talking to me. This is an Hispanic bartender. And I use her race because that's going to play a factor into this later on. I'm like, excuse me? I said, could you stop for a second and just talk to me for a second? Because I need us to see how we can correct this. And she kept pacing back and she said, sir, I don't have the time for this. You know what? Call our corporate office and figure this out and leave, please. So at that point, I'm getting upset, because I come in here nicely to talk to this person about correcting. It would have been a simple correction. Or maybe she said, oh, okay, we'll see how about fixing it, whatever. It didn't need to go there. She felt the need to just really raise her voice and be all crazy, right? So at this point, I'm yelling, she's yelling, and I'm just like walking away. So she says, I'm going to call the cops. Right. Because that's exactly, most of them know to do that. Because they know. Most of them. I'm not even talking about white people now. I'm talking about most people. When it involves a black person, all they want to do is call the cops because they know when the police shows up, they know that the police is going to take their word for it over a black person. They know this. It's a general knowledge. That's why I try not to be in those situations. I told you starting off that is my biggest concern. Because you can't, you see, when I'm driving and I get pulled over, I can control that situation. When you have someone like that, it becomes a chaotic situation. You can't almost, because it's their words again. They can create a scene. In this situation, she created a scene. She said, I'm calling the cops. So I'm like, okay, sure, call the cops. So at this point, I decided to stay and wait back, because if I had left, she would have told the cops anything she wanted to tell the cops, and they would take her word for it. So I decided to stay and wait. I went in my car, sat down, wait for the cops that she called. So while I was in my car, I decided, you know what, I'm going to call the police myself, because this is ridiculous. So I called the cops too. So apparently 2 calls were routed to the dispatch. So they sent 1 police officer. Okay, I want you guys to hear what I'm saying right now. I want to hear this conversation. So they sent a police officer, right, who parks behind me, because I was parked right in front of the bar. So I see this police officer. She's an Hispanic female police officer. Again, I'm going somewhere with this. She comes out. I come out. I'm dressed. I'm in my Mercedes. I'm well dressed. Okay, I'm dressed properly. It was the following week, the Saturday night, that I went over there. A week after I went the first time. I'm dressed. I'm in my car. I come out. I talk to. I meet the police officer. Hey, and I explain the situation with her. Nicely toned, nothing, because I understand how this whole thing worked. Wasn't flaring, nothing. So the police officer said, okay, let me go get her side of the story, which is naturally what they will have to do, right? So I asked the police officer, can I sit in my car? Do you want me to wait, or do I need to leave? She said, you can leave if you want to, right? I said, you know what, I'm just going to hang around in case you have a question or two for me. So I go in my car. She goes in and talks to the lady. So I'm in my car. I can see them talking. She comes back out. She waves to me to wind down my window. So I put the window down, and she says she needs to tell you something. This is what the cop says. She needs to tell you something. So this bartender comes and say, sir, you're not allowed to come here, with that same tone, the same tone she had, that energy. Yeah, you're not allowed to be in this premises anymore. You'll be banned from this premise. She goes on, and I say, hold on a second. You're not going to speak to me that way. The police officer pulls in front of my face and says, sir, you need to be calm. You need to calm down. Yeah, I'm in my car. The girl can go crazy all she wants. But the moment I say, you're not going to speak to me that way, police officer jumps into my face and say, you need to calm down. So that moment, I just, because I knew what was about to happen. So just relax. She lets this girl go crazy, tell me that I'm not allowed to be in the premises. First of all, she has no right on that. I cannot be in there. She has a right to ban me from their facility. Yes. But to tell me that I'm not allowed to be in the vicinity and their premises is against the law, because they are located in a shopping strip. Right? If you know anything about a shopping street, there's other businesses around that area. So it's a parking lot. There's like there's like grocery store. There's like different businesses, and they happen to be located. So to tell me that I can't be in that vicinity, in that parking lot, in that whole area that's shared by all these other businesses is against the law anyway, right? But she had the right to tell me I can't come to their bar, which I wasn't planning on going anywhere. But the fact that she could tell me that I'm banned, and this police officer didn't tell her that, no, ma'am, that's against his constitutional right to travel. You can ban him from your club, but you can't ban him. She didn't say none of that. She charged me to be quiet so this girl can spout out all of that. So I stayed calm, didn't do anything. Okay? So this girl goes on and on. So after that, the police officer said, you guys can go. So I drove off. And I can tell my spirit was I was so upset. I was so pissed off at that situation. And mostly at how the officer handled that situation, right? So when I drove off, I turned around and came right back. Because at this point, I was just going to report the officer, because I didn't think the officer handled that matter the way. So I came back. The officer was still in the car, and I said, I nicely came down. I said, hey, officer, do you mind if I get your information? Because normally she's supposed to give me like an incident report. She's supposed to give me an incident report. That's usually what happens. If you call an officer to the scene of anything, they usually give you an incident report, because they'll have to write a report about it. She didn't do that. She didn't care to do that. She just dismissed me and go away. So I came back. I said, can I please have your information and also the incident? She said, sure. So she's writing this stuff out. And I said, and I asked her, I said, you mind if I ask you a question, officer? She's like, yeah, sure. I said, with all due respect, I don't think you handled this fairly. And she's like, okay. That's how she did. She handed me, at this point, like there's 5 other police officers showed up. That's usually what. So she handed me that, and I said, okay, thank you very much, good night. And I drove my car, and I drove off. Right? I drove off. And when I got home, the next day, this was Saturday, actually on Monday, I called Internal Affairs because I knew that's where I was going to go with that. I called IAB, Internal Affairs, and I spoke to a sergeant at the Internal Affairs. And I said, I want to report this officer because I feel I was racially biased, right, in an incident. And I explained the whole thing with the sergeant. Normally, when you call IAB, they try to be fair, but mostly they will try to ask you questions to make it look like the officers were probably in the right. But when you push further, they will tell you things like, okay, do you want to file a complaint? That's exactly what I wanted to do, is file a complaint. And the reason why I wanted to file a complaint is, and this is something I want you guys to pay attention. I wanted to file a complaint because I knew that I wanted to have something on that cop's record, on her profile, that would stand against her in the future. See, that's how you fight this thing. You don't do all of that stuff on the street because they can use that to attack you and all of that. So I go there. They have this process where you do a complaint. They make it very tedious. It's not easy because they don't expect people to do that. And if you do that, they'll make it very, very tedious for you. So you go in there, first you go and you talk to somebody over the phone. It was during that period of time that I found out when I was trying to get this officer's information that I found out that I don't know if it was intentional, but I would think it was intentional. She wrote her badge number wrong. How do you not know your badge number? Okay, so when she wrote her name and her badge number, she wrote the numbers wrong. So when I called dispatch to try to locate her, dispatch was like, that's not a badge number. And I gave her her first and last name, and the dispatch finally gave me the badge number that she had, and that was the badge number. So that was suspicious to me on the front hand, but nonetheless, because she knew I was going to take this. When I asked for that information, she probably knew where I was going with it. So I called and I spoke to the sergeant. The sergeant said, okay, if you want to file a formal complaint, you have to come into the district, the precinct and all of that. So I go over there. I spoke to the sergeant again. I said, this is I was racially profiled, I believe I was racially profiled, and I would like to file a complaint because this officer was not fair, was biased, and I would like to file a complaint against this officer. So I go in there and they say, sure. And I go home and I typed up 2 pages. Okay? I typed up 2 pages of my complaint, sent it over to them. They began an investigation, right? Okay, which took about a month. Okay, they did an investigation. And then the officer called me, the detective called me back and said, well, now that we've concluded our investigation, it took a month for them to do all that. It's going to go to the review board. Okay, so the review board is likely going to call me. I don't have to be there present, but they're going to review it. If I want to be there, it's volunteer, whatever. It took another month, 3 weeks or to a month for the review board to finally call me. So I went to a review board. Now we're 2 months in. That's why this happened just 3 months ago. We're 2 months in. So I go to a review board. It was a room full of 30 people with uniforms. See, I'm never scared of the police officers because I've always regarded police officers as people that are necessary people in our society, right? I've always respected police officers. But nonetheless, a lot of them take the laws into their hands. While a lot of them are also good people, but a lot of them take the laws into their hands. So I go over there and I see a room of police officers and I say, thank you all for having me here. And I pleaded my case. I knew very well that it was a bureaucracy. That I knew all of that was just a show. That they were going to come back and tell me that this officer was not found to have been liable. I knew that. But I knew one thing I knew was that they weren't going to rip my complaint up. I knew they weren't going to do that. They have to file that in her profile. That was the goal. That was my goal. See, they didn't know where I was going with this. They thought I was looking for her to get fired. That was not what I was claiming. In my report, in my complaint, I specifically asked that I would like this officer to be sent to a sensitivity training, a racial sensitivity training. Because I feel like this officer lacked empathy. And I was requesting that this officer be sent to a racial sensitivity class. That was all I was asking for. After I was done with that, 2 weeks later, I got a letter. After we reviewed the case, blah, 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 we didn't find this officer to be liable. Right? That's what you would get. But I knew that anyway. But what I also knew, and I can bet on, is that they will have to take my complaint. Right now, it's in her permanent record. And that was the point I was trying to make. I wanted it to be in her permanent record because in the future, when she does the exact same thing, they're going to call my record up. And my record is going to potentially stand against that police officer. Now there is a history. Right? And that's the part I was trying to get. That's it. So now she could be a risk of either losing her pension, but either way, it's going to stand against her, right? And that was the part I wanted. So you got to know how to fight the system. You got to know how to do it. But either way, it wasn't a pleasant thing that I went through, right? It wasn't a pleasant thing that most people go through. Now, my situation was calm, and I went through that whole process and the rightful way and all of that. But you saw the outcome I got, okay? Most people are not so lucky. Let me give you another situation. Let me tell you what we deal with in this country, because you guys want to come here, okay? I'm telling you right now, if you have to ask me, I'll say stay where you are. Don't come here if you ask me. But you do whatever you want to do, okay? You do whatever what you feel is best. Because I guarantee you're thinking that the grass is greener on this side. It is not. Let me give you another situation. The house I was living in before we bought this house, we were there 8 years. This was a house, we bought it in 2012. My wife and I got married October 2012. We bought and closed on that house May of 2012. A month into, while I was in the house, I was packing up. My wife had gone in to go have her hair done. This is a Saturday. Our kids were not born at the time. You know, we were just newlywed. We were at least going to be getting married a few months down the line. So we're trying to get things ready for the wedding and all of that. So we're excited about our new home. I'm unpacking things. I'm in my wife beater. And I get a knock at the door. And it was two police officers. There's a white police officer and a black police officer. They came on the door and they knocked on my door. And I said, how are you doing, officer? How can I help you? And they said, well, we got a complaint. You know, the same bogus stuff you normally would hear. We got a complaint that your dog was barking uncontrollably, and we came here to address that. My dog. So at the time, I had two dogs that were house dogs. So did everybody else in the neighborhood, right? Everybody else in the neighborhood. So the idea that my dog was barking crazy, you would think my dog was out there attacking people. You would think. My dog was in the house. These guys tell me that the neighbor called that my dog was barking crazy. Can you imagine that? Think about it for a second. And so these police officers left important things they could be doing. They came to check it out. You would think that they got a call that my dog bit somebody, my dog attacked somebody, no, none of that. It was just that my dog was barking. Ridiculous. So I said, officer, I apologize if my dog was not barking. As a matter of fact, my dogs were asleep. I'm like, you sure it's my dog? You know, because my dogs were even asleep. I was working and doing all that stuff. The guy looked at me and says, first of all, when he knocked at the door, he says, do you live here? That's the first question he asked me. I said, yeah, I live here. This is my house. And then he proceeds to tell me that we got a call and all of that. And then when I tell him that, officer, I apologize, but I don't think that my dogs were the ones doing it, because my dogs are asleep. You know, he then tells me, can I see some identification? You know, and I was like, excuse me? I was like, you know, at that point, I just kind of gestured it off. I was like, you know, sir, you have a nice day. Thank you for coming. And I was going to close my door. No, he bangs over my door and forces his way into my house and tells me, if you don't show me identification right now, you're going to go to jail. This is what he tells me. Now, guess why he was doing all of this? Guess what his partner was doing? His black partner was right there. Nothing. Didn't stop him. Didn't say, hey, stop. None of that. Let him do this. Now, of course, the reason why is because some neighbor didn't like the fact that we bought the model home, because the home that we bought was the model home. So we just moved into that neighborhood, right? So somebody somewhere in that neighborhood didn't like that, right? That we moved into that neighborhood. So they decided to give us a welcome presence, right? Into the neighborhood. That was my first welcome to the neighborhood. This happened here in Texas. Okay, I love Texas. All right. So trust me, this is not to paint Texas bad. I love Texas, but this is what I faced. This was my reality. Okay. So he pulls in and says, if you don't give me an ID right now, you go to jail. And he tells me, you make a choice. So it's up to you. He was very, very forceful. So of course I knew what he was trying to do. So I go upstairs, because it was a 2-story building. I go upstairs, grab my ID, because he didn't think I owned the house, right? Grab it, but he left what he was called to do, right? And he's on something else now. First it was about the dog. Now you're asking me for my ID, right? Which is unconstitutional, right? He had no legal grounds for that, but he didn't care. As far as I was concerned, I was a black man. You can do whatever. So I go and give him my ID. He goes in his car and runs my stuff, finds out that I own the house, comes back and says, okay, you have a nice day, sir. And I was going to leave. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I said, I'm going to need your badge, your superior's name, and I need that information. please. She's like, sure, no problem. With the arrogance. That's usually. He takes it out, boom, hand is over to me. You have a nice day, sir. He leaves. So 5 minutes after, as I was leaving, I guess, I dialed the number. His sergeant picks up, who happens to be a black man. And I complained to the sergeant. Guess what this black sergeant tells me? The black sergeant tells me that that guy had every right to do exactly what he did. Now, I want you to pay attention now. Okay? Because sometimes you might read it up and be like, oh, white people over here are racist. Okay? This is a black sergeant. First of all, he had a black partner that didn't do anything when he was going through violating my rights in my own house. That one didn't stop him, right? I called. It was a black sergeant. Tells him that he had the right to do that. When a police officer, this is what he's like. Say, when a police officer comes to your house and knocks on your door and says he wants you to give him your identification, you need to comply. This is what the black officer is. The black sergeant says. I said, really? He says, yes. He said, if you weren't being so difficult, you wouldn't have got to go through that. So the black sergeant validated what this guy, in other words, validated his breaking of the law, because you need a warrant to get into someone's house. You can't just barge into someone's house, okay, uninvited as a police officer. You can't, especially when you don't have any plausible cause, okay, for you to do that. You have to have a warrant. There's rules in place for this. So I knew I was going to get away with this sergeant. So I decided, you know what? Monday come in. This happened on Saturday. I don't know why this whole thing's always happening on a Saturday. Right? So Monday comes, I call IAB, Internal Affairs. Right? So it was during that time that Internal Affairs says that he had no right to have done that. They had his captain call me. His captain called an hour after I got the call because the captain knew where I was going with this. And that was a lawsuit for the department. The captain, which was a white guy, called and said, I apologize. He was sincerely apologetic for what that police officer did. He said he is so sorry that the police officer had no right. This is what his captain said. Had no right. So I told him, what about the sergeant? He said the sergeant was wrong and he's going to have a conversation with him. He said, I'm going to send this police officer to an ethics class or whatever. I can't remember. This was years ago. But he apologized. Really, because he knew I had a case. I mean, I had cameras in my house. This was way before they had the body cam thing. This was back in 2012. They didn't have a body cam, but I had cameras in my house. So I had evidence. It wasn't just me using them. I had evidence. I had cameras in my house to show. It was going to be easy lawsuits, and he knew it. But it didn't stop the black guy. It didn't stop that guy from telling me that he was right. This is what you would get from most of them if you don't know your rights. So he apologized, said, please, I'm so sorry, because he didn't want me to press lawsuit. He didn't tell me that, but he was just telling me, please, I'm so, he was wrong for doing that. So of course I let that go. But the point I'm getting to is this. See, that happened to me, and I let that go, and I never pushed on it, I never pressed on it. But that is indicative of a lot of the things that a lot of us go through. Yes, we may have a nice house. Again, I told you don't own the house. So you can forget fooling yourself about this nice house. This house I'm living in right now, I told you, I'm never going to own it outright. It's my house, but I'm never going to own it. Okay? Now, I have cars. See, my wife and I are in a privileged position. We are like a few. I don't have any debt other than my mortgage. I don't have car note debt. My cars, thankfully, we paid it all off. We don't have any car debt. We don't have any credit card debt. We used to have credit card debt. We paid it all off. We don't own one credit card. We don't have any store debt. We don't have any student loan debt. My wife she took a small student loan when she went to school, when she got a master's. She has since paid that years ago. She paid that way long time. I never took a loan. I paid my way through school. So we don't have the debt. So the only debt that we have for us is the mortgage. Right? And that is not the same with most Americans. Most Americans carry a lot of these debts that I've talked about. It's a financial burden on top of the fact of the social dilemma that you're going to go through, which will weigh into you. It's going to weigh at you. It's going to weigh at your spirit. It's the reason why most of us, as I mentioned, the 45 and above, are thinking about coming home. See, I would go home today if I didn't have the 3 reasons that I told you about. As a matter of fact, I take that back. If I didn't have my kids God bless my kids, and I love that I have my kids. But my kids were not in the picture. I would go home. I would go home today. To tell you the truth, if Nigeria today, here's the case in point. If Nigeria today enacted two policies, I guarantee that most Nigerians in the United States, U.S. will lose half of the U.S. of Nigerian population here in 10 years. There are almost 400,000 Nigerians in the United States. If Nigerians enacted two policies, these two policies, they will lose half of that amount in 10 years. That means half of 200-some thousand people will leave and go back home. If Nigerians would take care of that security situation, right, which is ridiculous, they take care of that where you can walk down the street and not having to worry about either getting kidnapped or all that crazy stuff we hear about. And secondly, if Nigerians put a policy in place where diasporans can go home and have job opportunities, they take advantage of the talent pool and the experiences that we've had, just like China. See, China back in the 70s enacted a policy like that. I don't know why, for the life of me, I don't know why Nigeria could not do that for its citizens. But if they did that, if they somehow put in policies where they say, if you came home today, you will have an opportunity, even though we all have to compete for the opportunity, nonetheless, right? There will be an opportunity for diasporans to come home and utilize the talents. I guarantee you, if they did those two things, half of Nigerians in 10 years, half of the 400,000 will leave this place and go back home. See, I can deal with the bad roads over there. I don't mind. I can deal with the light situation. That's fine. I can deal with that. You know, I mean, I was born there. I can deal with that. That doesn't mean anything to me. When I went to visit my dad in 2019, and I was talking with him, we're having a conversation, and all of a sudden, this is before he passed on, God bless his soul. We were having a conversation, and they took out the light. I didn't even bat an eye. My dad looked at me and was like, yo, you didn't even flinch. I'm like, why? It's like, you didn't even flinch. I'm like, why? I didn't even bat an eye. See, that didn't bother me. See, if that's me, that's my tolerance. That doesn't bother me, right? Of course, I've gotten used to 24 hours. I can do without that. I can do without the good roads and all. I can do without that. I can do without it. For the opportunity to be amongst people that are my people, where I don't have to defend my blackness. I don't have to get up every day and have that situation I just told you, those two scenarios that could possibly happen. The video I just told you, I just showed you with that poor black gentleman that was kicked in the head. Now understand that is situations that happen. This just happened to be the one they caught on camera. This happened on a regular basis. The violation of human rights in this country. They go on every day. Is that the situation you want to be in? Do you want to leave a place that at least values your humanity to a place that would question your humanity? And they don't want you here. So let them have it. See, I've gone to that point, right? And so I wanted to have this video to tell you all that, because you're going to watch this and you're going to be like, oh, it's easy for him to tell you. I'm telling you, this is not to deter you. But if you were to ask me, I'll tell you, sit yourself back where you are. Okay? And fix your country. Fix it. Because I will tell you that the future for black people is not here. It's back home. The future and the answer to a lot of our questions is not here in the United States. It's not here in England. It's not here in Australia, whatever. It's back home. I don't know for the life of me why many that you guys, and again, this is not to cast any blame, but I don't understand in the life of me why you guys would have allowed the government, the present administration, to get away with what they've gotten away. I would have expected at this moment, like the NSARS thing that happened 2 years ago, you guys were able to mobilize. And that was a period in time that I said to myself, my goodness, they're going to change this country. And the stuff just kind of fizzled away. I don't know for the life of me why you guys would not just mobilize the way you did 2 years ago and go and post and sit in the homes or in the doorsteps of these leaders and say, you're not leaving. I mean, you do it peacefully because the NSAS thing was a peaceful thing, but you're not leaving until they change your country. I don't know for the life of me why you would not do that. I don't get it. You did it for the NSAS. Now we've got the situation with the flood. There's 34 of 36 states right now flooded. Now, I know that situation is bad, but I don't get for the life of me why. People who are in dire situation will not do that to change their situation. But that's the stuff you need to do. Because the answer to a lot of us is back home. It's not here. The diasporans are not your savior. They're not your savior. The country and the land over there is the savior. And I think that most of us need to realize that. And I am always going to be grateful to the United States for the life that He's given me. But I know that, with my house and my cars, and I have acquired some nice cars. I do have some nice cars that I've paid off, right? But that stuff pisses these people off. How dare you come to my country and own a Maserati? Because I have a 2009 Maserati that I've since paid off. If you ask me today what that car is doing for me, it's doing absolutely nothing for me. Right? It's doing nothing for me. But I hardly drive it. It's doing nothing for me. And there's nothing I can do with it. I don't know what I'm going to do with the car. It sits in my garage. I don't do anything with it. I drive once every week, if that. And that's because it's paid off. Now, the two things I can do is sell it and be done with it, or I trade it in for another car like it. And why would I want to do that and stay in this revolving line of thing? I'm not going to do so. So it's a revolving cycle. But these are the things that pisses them off, because they're like, how dare you come to my country and become this successful? And it shows up in many ways. If it doesn't show up at the job, it shows up in what I just described to you guys. And it becomes a burden that I tell you that it becomes a burden that money ceases to become that which matters at some point in your life. What matters is to be accepted, to be loved, to be respected. Those things matter more than money. Most people that have reached that peak in life, they will get that. They will understand that. Most of you might think, oh, no, I just need the money because you think you're right in the year. Sure. But at one point in your life, you're going to understand, however, how much money you have, whether you have 30,000, you're making modest income, or you're making an average income, or you're making a lot of money, you're going to find out that money ceases to matter. What things that will really matter, that will stay mattering, is family and communal. So that's why I wanted to do this video, because I wanted to just employ most of you to really think about that. To think about that decision that you wanted to make to come here to the United States. You need to think about that. Think about your sense of dignity. And think about out of all of this stuff that you think you're going to get, you're not going to own it. You're not. Right? Most of you own your cars back home. Right? You own it. If you use the cash system, you pay, you just be done with it. You own your homes back home. Most of you don't. I know this is going to shock you. Most of you are a lot better off than most of us that are here. I will tell you that most of you, with what I've just described to you, most of you are a lot better off than most of us up here. Yes, I am not insensitive to the devastation that many people face over there. Yes, I'm not insensitive to that. But these people are not watching me. Okay, these people are not watching me, because if you have the money to leave, if you have the money to leave that country, you have the money to change your situation. Because they're not going to just bring you here for free. You're going to need to be able to support yourself here. So if you have that money to leave your country, to come to another country, you have the money to be able to change your situation. You just need to stop thinking that you're going to get better and this place is going to give you all the answers you're looking for. It is not. It is not. In many cases, you might find yourself worse off than you ever were. In many cases, you're going to find yourself in debt that you're not going to pay off. Because, for example, I can leave this place and go to Nigeria if I wanted to tomorrow. I can sell my house, and my wife and I, if I decide I want to just move my kids over there, I can leave. And I can leave and I can come back if I wanted to. And I can pick up from where I stopped. Because why? I don't have any debt waiting for me here. Because I don't have any credit card debt. I don't have none of these stuff. I can sell my house, take the proceeds of that, go over there, buy a house over there, spend some years of it, come back here and pick up where I left off. Now, of course, I'm going to have to buy another house here. But the point is that I'm not going to hurt my financial record here if I leave. Many people can't do that. Many people are indebted. They are in financial slavery. They can't just up and leave, because if they leave and don't pay that credit card debt, they don't leave, they don't pay that car note debt, it's going to affect what's called a FICO score. We all have a FICO score, which is a series of numbers. This is how it tracks your whole financial history. This is how when you go to the bank to ask for a loan, to buy a house, they pull your FICO score. And the lower the score, the less likely you're going to get a loan. The higher the score, the better chances you're going to be. And the only way you get higher score is when you have a good payment history, right? You have a good payment history. You've never been late one time. Then that way, so you can't just not pay your credit card and leave and think you're going to come back and be good. No, it's not going to happen. So most people are locked in here. They're not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to do it. Is that a situation you want to come into? Is that a situation? So if that's a situation, by all means, please come in. I mean, that's just the financial part of it. Not to talk about the other social situation that you're going to get from everybody. You're going to get from everybody. Everyone is going to hate you. Everybody. The hate that permeates this society is such that you can cut it with the scissors. But if you think that after all I've said all of that, you still want to come here, by all means, sure, show up. And I pray to God that your situation is better off than most people that are in this country. Because most people in this country are in a horrible situation. Most people are one paycheck away from being homeless. You think it's not a statistic you're just throwing out there. It's a reality. Most people are one paycheck away from getting kicked out of their house. In Texas, and I'm going to wrap up. In Texas, in New York, you can different states have different laws. But in Texas, you got 7 days before they kick you out of that apartment. So rent is due on the 1st, right? Rent is due on the 1st. You don't pay on that 1st, they start tagging what's called a late fee. They will let you go all the way to 3 days. 4th day, they start what's called an eviction procedures on you. The 4th day, eviction procedures. By the 6th, 7 days, the sheriff is at your door asking you to move out of that place. 7 days is all it takes for them to kick you out of that apartment. Never mind, you've been paying that for like 6 months straight. See, back home over there, you guys pay yearly, right? You pay yearly. So you pay 1 year, and you don't have to worry about your rent situation till the following year. So that's, so within that year, you might lose your job, whatever, but at least you're going to have a house. If you've paid up your rent, you're good, right? You just have to worry about the following year where you got to pay another rent year. Here, it's 7 days. You're on a month-to-month basis. You miss that 1 month, they kick you out of an apartment, and that's an apartment. For a home, they will give you a little leeway. So you might go like 3, 6 months, 3 months, 4 months, but either way, it's compiling, right? And then you can start. They're not going to kick you off right away because it takes a while. It takes a lot to get a house. So they're not just going to kick you out of your house because you didn't pay your mortgage the first month. That doesn't happen that way. So the bank will work with you because the bank doesn't want to take they don't want to. It's a liability for them to take that house back. So they'll work with you, but there's only so much that can go, right? 6 months, depending on the community you live in. They'll kick you out. You're out of there. And that goes into your record. You're not going to be able to get another house because they will report that to to the credit bureaus. And you're not going to be, the likelihood of you getting it's not going to happen because you have that default that you're going to have to answer to, and you're not going to get another house. Same thing with a credit card. Same thing with a car loan. So every time you default, it penalizes you on your credit report. Many cases, you lose like 20 points if you default one time. So you can go 20 years paying your car on time. The moment you default one time, you're going to lose 20 points, which will gravely affect your credit report. Is that the type of situation you want to come into? Okay, so if that's the kind of situation, after you've heard all of that, if you still want to come in to that, by all means, show up. Okay, by all means, show up. But I would strongly ask and urge that you think about that recently. Think about that very, very carefully. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Please like the video. Subscribe to the channel. And thank you all for staying tuned, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.